Adolf Hitler is one of the most controversial figures in history. We've all, to some extent, been acquainted with the public life of this individual in his political and military roles. The career of the man responsible for the bloodiest war of the 20th century has been tirelessly analyzed by scholars and historians worldwide over the years. However, very little is known about the personal life of this dictator. In this new installment, we will follow the trail of the Führer's legacy to uncover the secrets of his key family connections. In today's episode, we will attempt to answer a haunting question: what became of the most hated surname in history? Without further ado, we invite you to unveil the family tree of the man who turned anti-Semitism into genocide. Welcome once again to Military History. The child you just saw is none other than Adolf Hitler. It probably seems strange to see such an innocent face, knowing that he was one of the cruelest men in history. However, his life began like many others. The future German Führer was born on April 20th, 1889, in a small village near Linz, not far from the German border, in what was then the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His family, of middle-class status, had a comfortable living thanks to his father's employment with the Imperial Customs Service. He was a man of dominant personality who had two faces, one amiable in public life and another violent and authoritarian behind closed doors at home. Father of the Nazi leader was not named Hitler, but Alois Schicklgruber. At the age of 39, he requested permission to use the name of his stepfather, Johann Georg Hiedler. It was Alois himself who altered the surname by not writing it in that way, but as Hitler. No one knows why that spelling change occurred, but that's how it remained in history. Alois had several love affairs that led to his divorce from his first wife. One of his mistresses was Clara Petacci, Hitler's mother. Although it cannot be confirmed to this day, there are versions circulating that Clara and Alois were second cousins. While his father had other children from his two previous marriages, after marrying Clara in 1885, they had 6 children. Among them, only 2 formed a stronger bond: Adolf and Paula, born in June 1896, but we will talk more about her later. Alois did not get along well with his only son, who insisted on pursuing art, while his father wished for him to become a civil servant. When Alois died in 1903, Hitler was able to start his artistic career, which clearly was not successful and pushed him towards other paths. Conversely, the relationship between Adolf and his mother was close, until a breast cancer took her to the grave in 1907, leaving her son completely devastated. Only he and Paula remained.
When we children played Red Indians, my brother Adolf was always the leader. All the others did what he told them. They must have had an instinct that his will was stronger than theirs.
One of the few direct testimonies of Adolf Hitler's childhood comes from Paula, who recounted that among all the siblings, it was he who provoked Alois's anger the most. She said, "It was Adolf, with his obstinacy, who pushed my father to extreme severity, and for that he received a good beating every day." After their father's death in 1903, Adolf, 7 years older than Paula, left for Vienna. Paula stayed with their mother. The sibling relationship worsened in 1908 when she tried to persuade him not to enlist in the army. They stopped speaking and only saw each other again 13 years later in Vienna. By then, Hitler was the leader of the National Socialist Party. In 1930, Hitler suggested to Paula that for her safety, it was better to change her last name to continue working. At that time, she was employed at an insurance company. The relationship with Paula was distant, but pleasant until 1941, when, during one of their meetings in Vienna, she told her brother that she was engaged to an officer named Erwin Jekelius. However, the wedding never took place. Hitler not only forbade it, but also ordered Jekelius's arrest and sent him to the Eastern Front, where he died as a prisoner of war in a Soviet camp. Paula never forgave him. After the war, the Nazi leader's sister was captured, interrogated, and her assets were confiscated by the US government, despite not having participated in Hitler's activities. During this interrogation, Paula defended him and stated that she did not believe Adolf had been involved in the extermination of millions of people. Later, history would prove her wrong. Paula was released and returned to Vienna, where she survived with the help of some friends until she found a job in an art gallery. In 1952, she moved to Germany, disappearing amidst its ruins. Hitler's only sister died there 8 years later. Now let's turn to the case of Otto, the brother virtually unknown to official history. When the dictator was only 3 years old, his mother gave birth to a child with hydrocephalus, who died after 6 days. According to the historians responsible for this discovery, this experience has not been taken into account in the analyses and descriptions of his personality conducted so far. Thus, researchers point out that the dictator's biography has been written based on false assumptions. Until now, the biography placed Hitler as the fourth of 6 siblings. However, the new documents prove that Adolf was the third offspring of the family before Otto came into the world and died 6 days later. Experts even refer to the possible influence, albeit subconscious, of that traumatic experience on the Nazi doctrine that disabled individuals should be eliminated in order to improve and purify the race. Something that in his adulthood, Hitler would take to unimaginable limits. Now let's delve into the story of the Führer's nephew-in-law, William Patrick Hitler. The story of William Patrick Hitler is truly worth telling. It couldn't have been easy for this man to bear such a surname. Indeed, it wasn't. Despite his attempts in his youth to ingratiate himself with his uncle, he managed to change the course of his own story. He rebelled against the supposed mandates and showed convictions far removed from those of his famous relative. William Patrick Hitler was born on March 12, 1911 in the city of Liverpool, United Kingdom, into a household formed by Alois Hitler Jr., son of his father's previous marriage, and his wife, Bridget Dowling. The head of the family had the uncomfortable privilege of being the half-brother of the Nazi leader. This was not only a heavy burden for him, but also for the rest of the family and their descendants. With the outbreak of World War I, Alois Hitler Jr. ended up abandoning his family, and young William was left in the care of his mother. Alois remarried, but only re-established contact in the mid-1920s when he wrote to Bridget asking her to send William to visit him in Germany. This happened during the days of the so-called Weimar Republic. William arrived in 1929 at the age of 18 for a short stay and then returned with his mother to the United Kingdom. However, for some reason, in 1933 he returned to Nazi Germany, possibly with the aim of taking advantage of his uncle's rise to power. Adolf Hitler seemed to meet the young man's expectations and got him jobs, first in a bank, then at the Opel factory, and later as a car salesman. Unsatisfied with the outcome, William demanded something better from his uncle. There are many versions insisting that he even blackmailed the Nazi leader with selling embarrassing family stories to the press. In 1938, under the apparent promise of a high-ranking job in one of the official departments of the Nazi state, Hitler asked the young man to renounce his British citizenship. William thought it was a trap and fled the country, never to return. The following year, he and his mother embarked on a joint lecture tour of the United States, during which the young man spoke of his hatred towards his uncle. However, fate had an unexpected turn in store for them. On September 1st of that year, World War II broke out and they had to stay and live there.
I have just left Germany, and Adolf Hitler, who is my uncle, I personally have no time for. I believe that Hitler's policy in Europe will not bring any benefit to the human race at all. I hope that the American people in this country will not be kidded by my moustache, because after all, my heart is in the right place, and that's the main thing.
William Hitler's life changed drastically in 1944 when, tired of the burden of bearing the infamous surname, he decided it was time to fight against his very own uncle. It was then that he directly contacted the President of the United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and formally asked him to allow him to enlist in the American Armed Forces. The idea was one and only one: to rid himself of the stain of the Hitler name in favor of the cause for freedom and from the Allied side. Finally, he was granted the necessary permissions to join the U.S. Navy. When the war ended, William Patrick Hitler married and changed his heavy paternal name to Stuart Houston. This controversial figure, who died in 1987, had 4 children. One of them is Alexander Stuart Houston. In Patchogue, Long Island in the city of New York, an American flag waves in a garden. The owner of the house is Alexander Stuart Houston, the great-nephew of Adolf Hitler. The man lives almost anonymously, under a pseudonym that does not evoke the sinister past of his great-uncle. In appearance, nothing connects him to Adolf Hitler. He, like his father and siblings, also does not want it to be so. Alexander, who is around 75 years old, is the eldest of the descendants of the Nazi genocidaire. When he was born, his parents chose Adolf as his middle name. Today, it does not appear on his documents. Just like his father, Alexander, moved by the evidence of the bloody official history, shuns the surname that once destroyed the lives of millions of innocents. It's time to talk about the women in the Führer's life, a very peculiar chapter in the life of this sinister figure. They called her Geli, short for Angela. She was Hitler's niece and, according to the Nazi leader's biography, his great love, a taboo love. Today, few doubt that it was the only truly profound story of his life. On September 19, 1931, Geli was found dead in her bedroom in Hitler's apartment in Munich, Germany. She was discovered in a pool of her own blood, with a bullet wound to her chest. Her uncle's pistol lay beside her. No investigation was ever conducted, not even an autopsy. Instead of putting an end to the rumors, this only fueled them, creating an enigma that remains unresolved to this day. After his niece's death, Hitler fell into a deep depression. Heinrich Hoffmann, a photographer and close friend of the Führer, claimed that if Geli had not died, things might have been different. He believed that after her death, the seeds of inhumanity began to sprout within the Nazi leader. But who was this woman really? Geli entered Hitler's life when she was 17 and he was 36. The Nazi leader summoned her mother to work as a housekeeper in his home in Munich. Soon, the leader of the National Socialist Party fell head over heels for his niece, whom he described as an unusual beauty. But that wasn't all. Geli, besides being an attractive teenager, was as intelligent as her uncle. When Hitler moved to his luxurious apartment in the city, Geli stayed with him. By then, the girl was 21 years old and had gone from being the daughter of a domestic worker to the queen of the court. Those who shared life with the dictator claim that few women were admitted into his inner circle. Certainly, they were never allowed to become the center of attention and had to remain in sight, but not heard. They could occasionally take a small part in the conversation, although they were never allowed to defend a point of view or contradict Hitler. With his niece, everything was different. However, as he became more passionate about her, Geli became increasingly indifferent. In the last months of her life, she made desperate efforts to escape. Geli wanted to go to Vienna, some say forever. The only thing that is certain is that at some point between the sunset of September 18th and the morning of September 19, 1931, 23-year-old Geli left this world. Her death became one of the pieces of the perpetually incomplete puzzle. After this event, Hitler assured his associates that he was now a completely free man, belonging only to the German people and his mission. What no one knew was that shortly after his niece's death, Hitler had intensified a relationship with someone who would play the most important role in his life. We are talking about our last protagonist, Eva Braun, the woman who lived in the shadow of Hitler.
Diría, según lo que sé hoy, que ella era una persona evidentemente depresiva. Tenía que disimular su depresión todo el tiempo. Con deportes, con ropa, de alguna manera tenía que distraerse constantemente de lo que la agobiaba.
You have just heard Gertrude Weisker, Eva Braun's cousin, who spent the last months of 1944 with her when the Reich was collapsing. After listening to it, you may be wondering what happened in Eva's life for her to suffer this depression. To answer it, it is necessary to know it a little more. Behind every great man there is a great woman, but what woman is behind the being that personifies the devil himself? Adolf and Eva met in October 1929. The Nazi leader invited her to the opera and thus began their relationship. Although before beginning her affair, the future genocidaire investigated Eva's family tree to find out if she had any Jewish ancestors. The relationship between the two was not easy at all. Proof of this are Eva's two attempts. The first was in 1932, during Hitler's grueling election tour. In order to get the attention of her lover, she shot herself in the chest with her father's pistol. The second took place in 1935, when Hitler had already gained absolute power in Germany. The reasons were the same. Eva Braun felt alone and abandoned.
El intento de Eva Braun muestra que esta relación, en ese momento, ya había adquirido una dimensión más profunda. Que de ninguna manera era una relación superficial, sino que esta relación de alguna manera había perdido el control.
Although Hitler began to pay more attention to him, his role remained little recognized. Only a very small circle of trust knew about their relationship. Eva Braun lived in the shadow of the Führer. However, according to the writer and historian Heike Gertemaker, the dictator's lover clearly shared his worldview and political ideas. The outbreak of war considerably altered Eva Braun's life at the Berghof residence, which, in 1941, became the headquarters where all operations at the front were discussed. The constant visits of military personnel to the mansion increased, and the time for private life almost completely disappeared. As the days went by, Eva Braun couldn't stand being away from her love. She reflected it in her personal diary. The weather is delicious, and I, the lover of the greatest man in Germany and the world, but I have to sit at home, looking out the window. The war was going from bad to worse for Germany. The Führer's health was also worsening, and Eva Braun wrote a will understanding that the end could be near for her. On January 16, 1945, Hitler moved to his Berlin bunker, and Eva followed him. With the Russian army at the gates of the capital, the girl was practicing with her pistol in case she had to shoot herself the moment they reached the bunker. After giving up the war, Hitler ordered everyone, including Eva Braun, to leave for safety, but she did not want to leave the Führer. On April 29, 1945, they were married in the Berlin bunker. In the presence of the commanders and leaders who remained there, a simple ceremony was held where Hitler gave his fiancée a ring hastily forged for the occasion. The next day, April 0th, the newlyweds entered the Führer's office. There, Eva received a dose of cyanide and a gun. Hitler chewed the vial and shot himself in the head. Eva, although she did not manage to fire the gun, died of poisoning at age 33. Thus concluded the tragic story of these two lovers who knew how to invent a strange way of loving each other, an indecipherable passion between love and death. The endless labyrinth that history presents to us sometimes leads us to face little-known situations, such is the case of the secrets of Hitler's family. The fact of clinging to the official story sometimes prevents us from looking at circumstances that are extremely curious and interesting. That is why questions and doubts are always valid, since it is those answers that will lead us to the discovery of what usually remains hidden. That is also our responsibility to history. We usually identify the Italian fascist leader by his powerful speeches and his attitude as a ruthless soldier. But in addition to his political career, he had a personal life full of secrets, deceit, dead children, and imprisoned women. Benito Mussolini's family is a mystery that historians have sought to unravel since the end of World War II. In this new installment of military history, we offer you an exclusive pass to the intimacy of one of the cruelest men of the 20th century, and the brutal fate that befell his wives, lovers, and children. Benito Amilcare Andrea Mussolini was born on July 29, 1883 in Dovia, a village in the municipality of Predappio, in the province of Forlì-Cesena. His father was the blacksmith Alessandro Mussolini, while his mother, Rosa Maltoni, was a teacher who firmly believed in the importance of education. Curiously, the name was chosen by his father, a local socialist leader in memory of Benito Juarez, a reformist hero and former president of Mexico, of Amilcare Cipriani, an Italian anarchist patriot, and of Andrea Costa, the first socialist deputy elected to the Italian parliament. From the beginning, his life was linked to politics.
Like so many in Romagna, he is raised in a family of radical socialists who are often jailed for their political beliefs.
As a child, the future fascist leader received his primary education in Dovia and then in Predappio. As a teenager, he entered the Salesian school in Faenza, but was expelled for a fight with a classmate. He continued his secondary education at the Giosuè Carducci school in Forlimpopoli, where he obtained a license as a junior technician in September 1898. From November 1902, he lived in Switzerland after fleeing Italy to avoid compulsory military service, traveling from town to town and doing temporary jobs. After a turbulent period, he returned to his native country in 1904. An interesting aspect of the life of the fascist leader is his romantic relationships, as complex as they were bloated. He had many affairs and several deceptions, but some names stand out among others. The first of these is Ida Dalser, whom he allegedly married in 1914 and who became the mother of his firstborn son, Benito Albino. Unfortunately, her relationship with Mussolini did not end well, as she was later forcibly committed to an asylum by the fascist police. This was an operation to hide a partner who was embarrassing to the politician, who described the woman as dangerous, unbalanced, and criminal, calling her an enemy of the state. Dalser lived for 10 years behind bars in a very poor asylum, suffering extreme hardship as a political prisoner of her ex-husband. All information about her past was suppressed by the state, and only after the war was over did the news become known about her, when the documents were opened to historians and researchers.
But an edict from the city of Milan at the time did denote and state that Mussolini must have made payments in maintenance for the child to his wife Ida Dalser. But the child bearing Mussolini's name was forgotten about and neglected, never being fully accepted by his father.
As for his son, the young Benito Albino, rejected by his father and with his mother confined in a mental hospital, he was raised by employees and in schools where he was not allowed to receive visitors. Little is known about what kind of relationship he had with the fascist leader, but it is possible to assume that it was non-existent and distant. The young man had a tragic, premature death, about which there are not many certainties, but rather several versions that contradict each other. Some claim that he was also confined like his mother and that he died in a mental asylum. Other sources suggest that he died in a naval battle during World War II. The only thing that is certain is that he was buried in 1942 at the age of 27. It is because of treatment like this that several academics have described Mussolini as one of the most heartless and brutal fathers of the time, even more so than his German peers who rarely showed such contempt for their offspring. Later, we will tell you how he treated the rest of his children. Long before his relationship with Dalsar ended, the dictator had already met the woman who would become one of the most important people in his life, Rachel Guidi. She admired Mussolini, and after going on a date with him, they began a relationship. They eventually married on the 17th of December 1915 in a civil ceremony held in Treviglio, in the Lombardy region. A decade later, in December 1925, they renewed their vows in a religious service held at the height of the fascist boss's political rise. As his wife, she participated in a few public events.
Donna Rachele Mussolini presenzia l'inaugurazione della Casa della Madre del Bambino, nuova magnifica realizzazione dell'Opera Nazionale Maternità e Infanzia.
But Rachele mostly portrayed herself as an exemplary fascist mother and housewife. When they got married, she didn't wear white. There were no photographs, nor a grand ceremony. The fact is that both were very superstitious and believed that all these details could go against the couple's success. Such were their beliefs that, for example, they wouldn't sit at a table if there were 13 diners. According to family and friends of the couple, they were united until the end. Shortly before he was killed, Mussolini spoke to her on the phone and told her that she was the only woman he had ever truly loved. Later, we will learn another version that paints a quite different family picture of the great romance of the Italian dictator. With Rachele Guidi, they had 5 children: Etta, Vittorio, Bruno, Romano, and Anna Maria. Although Benito Mussolini was not a present and loving father to any of them, there are particular stories and preferences on the part of the fascist boss. Let's get to know the leader's offspring in detail. Apart from Albino, her rejected son, Etta was the eldest of the official clan. She was born before her parents married, and, because of her resemblance to Mussolini, she was her father's favorite. Some claim that their personalities were even similar, as the girl was haughty and had a lot of character. Etta liked a luxurious life and expensive objects, and she got angry when her parents did not give her what she asked for. To meet her demands and generate political ties, Benito arranged the marriage between Etta and Count Galeazzo Ciano, who became an important figure within Italian fascism. He was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, so together with his wife, they made numerous trips to Nazi Germany before the start of the war. However, Ciano was not liked by the Reich because they considered him prone to treason, so when they entered Italy, they arrested him and shot him. Etta managed to escape to Switzerland with her children. Although history says that she was her father's favorite, she never returned his kindness. In one of her most famous quotes, she said, "The only thing that can help my father is to escape or commit suicide." Next in line in the official clan was Vittorio, who was born in 1916 and soon became an enthusiastic fascist, so much so that he enlisted as a pilot at the age of 19. He was the one who demonstrated the greatest political ability, as he negotiated numerous safe conduct passes with the Third Reich. The son of Deuce, the propaganda name by which the fascist leader became known in political life, married in 1937, causing great commotion.
Rome, a great day for Italy and the family of Mussolini. Lieutenant Vittorio of the Air Force is being married to Signorina Orsala Buvoli. The bridegroom, of course, is son of Il Duce. So great was the excitement that special passes were issued to people living in the neighborhood of the church.
Not everything was rosy in Vittorio's life. It was a difficult time, and he himself was the one who intervened to achieve the peaceful surrender of the Italian fascist hierarchy in April 1945, when it was clear that World War II was lost. Once the war was over, he fled and remained in deep anonymity until his death in 1997. Very little is known about Bruno, Rachele, and Benito's third son. He was born in 1918, and there is only a record of his passion for airplanes, which in 1941 became his downfall when he tested a bomber in World War II. The machine crashed, killing the young man. The reports of the time do not speak of an important funeral or great sorrow on the part of the fascist dictator, but the truth is that he was never an affectionate person, not even in times of tragedy. Romano and Anna Maria were born much later than their older brothers, so they had very little relationship with them and their father. During his childhood, Mussolini was completely preoccupied with relations with Germany and the imminent outbreak of continental war. It is said that they loved their father very much, but saw him only sporadically. As an adult, Romano became a successful jazz pianist, while Anna Maria worked for years as a radio presenter. Let's listen to the talents of the dictator's youngest son. It is impossible to underestimate the importance of Rachele Guidi in her husband's career, although she always remained in the shadows. She did not usually attend official events, nor did she appear in the press, and this allowed her to enjoy a certain anonymity. She traveled by bus around the city and then explained to the Duce what people were talking about in the street, something that the fascist used greatly in his speeches. This connection with the workers was one of the great banners of his government. On one occasion, the Minister of Agriculture proposed to the Duce to reduce wheat reserves, but Rachele Guidi warned him that this was madness, because it was the raw material for making bread, on which all the poor children depended for food. In the archives of the town of Forlì, in northern Italy, there is a telegram from September 8, 1942, in which Mussolini orders that the reserves of this sustenance be guaranteed, so his wife's advice was taken very seriously. When King Victor Emmanuel III summoned the Duce to Rome on July 25, 1943, Rachele also advised him, this time to wear a military uniform as he usually did. But this time Mussolini did not listen to his wife, went dressed in civilian clothes as the monarch had requested, and was arrested. Thus ended his regime. Even if he had obeyed his wife on this occasion, it is unlikely that he would have escaped his fate. The discredit of his administration was evident, and after painful defeats, he had become a burden for Italy.
Italy's stab-in-the-back entry into the war. Visions of cheap conquest which were to vanish together with its sawdust Caesar, fascism, the Italian Empire, and after over 3 years of catastrophic warfare, the unconditional surrender of the Italian nation.
Beyond his importance as an Italian leader, the truth is that the most famous photograph taken of the Duce is not exactly an honorable capture. The most celebrated and brutal image is that of 5 corpses hanging upside down, which are the object of mockery and ridicule by a war-weary crowd. Among these lifeless remains is the fascist leader Benito Mussolini and that of a woman. Many, upon seeing her, confuse her with his wife of 3 decades, Rachele Guidi, but it is not her. Next to the dictator was Clara Petacci, his lover, a figure who was fundamental in the last years of the Second World War and who accompanied the man until his death at the hands of an angry people. Although she could have fled, Petacci preferred to stay with him and end her days with the man she had always loved. Clara Petacci, Claretta, as she was known to those closest to her, was born in Rome on February 28, 1912, to a bourgeois family. The head of the clan, Francesco Saverio Petacci, was part of Pope Pius XI's medical team and ran a high-end clinic in Rome. Her mother, Giuseppina Persichetti, was a fervent Catholic, and it was rare to see her without a rosary in her hands. The young woman had artistic talents and studied music as a student of the Italian violinist and composer, Corrado Archibughi. Clara also had great physical attractiveness and an intelligence that surprised everyone who met her. She loved reading and wrote everything down in her diary, but there was one quality about her that ended up marking her entire life. From her teenage years, she was attracted to the figure of Benito Mussolini. In fact, Her student room was wallpapered with photos of the dictator, who at that time was already around 50 years old.
She desired to be someone important in life, and she wished for a career in the arts as an actress or as a painter. She became engaged to Riccardo Federici, an officer with the Italian Air Force, and they later got married in 1934. However, her life had changed 2 years before, when she first met the man she dreamed of meeting for so long.
Chance had it that on 24th April 1932, a 20-year-old Clara Petacci crossed paths with Benito Mussolini. She was traveling with her family and her fiancé on the road from Rome to Ostia. Suddenly, an Alfa Romeo overtook the family car at full speed, and Clara, seeing who the driver of the vehicle was, began to shout excitedly, "El Duce! El Duce!" Then Claretta, who had already sent her several letters declaring her admiration, was perplexed when the dictator's car stopped and agreed to exchange a few words with her. It was love at first sight, and from then on they kept in touch more and more frequently. Clara was truly in love with the leader, and was a devoted and unconditional lover, although she was not the only one nor the first. Mussolini's audiences with Clara took place on Sundays after Mass at the Palazzo Venezia in Rome. Over time, they ceased to be sporadic and became an everyday occurrence. The wife of the fascist leader, Rachele Guido, was well aware of her husband's relationship with that woman, 29 years younger than him, and despite her every attempt to keep him away from her, she was unsuccessful. She had to watch as the young woman moved to the exclusive Villa Cameluccia neighborhood in Rome and walked through the streets of the capital with a chauffeur and accompanied by bodyguards provided by the state. Mussolini was a jealous man. He forced Clara to seclude herself in a luxurious apartment where the young woman spent hours documenting everything with great care.
Mussolini would regularly call Petacci a number of times each day, sometimes for long periods of time, and she was known to be rather jealous, and these calls eased her mind.
In her diary, she left detailed descriptions of her intimate relations with the dictator and also expressed her political ideas. When she had to flee Italy in haste, she gave more than 2,000 pages to her friend, Countess Rina Czervis, who buried them in the garden of her villa in Brescia. This document was discovered in the 1950s by the police and published as a book several decades later. Beyond what happened in the secret Sunday meetings, for the Italians, the Duce had only one wife, Rachele Guidi. Her story is curious, since she was the daughter of one of the lovers of Alessandro, Mussolini's father, which even led to speculation about the possibility that they were siblings. The fact is that Rachel patiently suffered all the infidelities of her husband, who had relations with aristocrats, right-wing and left-wing bourgeois women. Even with Maria José of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, wife of the heir of King Victor Emmanuel of Savoy III. But Clara was different. Rachele knew that the young woman had come to stay, and perhaps even to replace her. And she ultimately succeeded, albeit in the worst of circumstances. Before long, everything seemed to fall apart for Mussolini. In July 1943, he was expelled from the government by the king, then imprisoned and sent to prison on Monte Gran Sasso. There he was released by the Germans and settled on Lake Garda, where he presided over a puppet government of the Third Reich, the Italian Social Republic, better known as the Republic of Salo. At the beginning of 1945, Clara was reunited with her beloved. But when he saw that the end was imminent, Mussolini prepared the departure of his lover and that of Rachele herself and her children. He told them that there was a car waiting to take them to the airport and take a plane to Spain, where he assured them they would be well treated. Clara flatly refused to leave the fascist leader. In fact, it was her last chance to be the only woman in his life. On April 27, 1945, Mussolini made a final attempt to escape from the Allies, but was eventually captured by a patrol of partisans. The dictator was taken from the town hall in Dongo to a private home, for fear that the Germans or the Allies themselves might take him away. Again, Clara asked to stay with Mussolini, despite the partisans having offered her to escape. The next day, April 28th, all the occupants of the vehicle, including Petacci, were shot and their bodies taken to Milan, where they would be hung by their feet for posthumous public ridicule. It was there that the photo with which we began the story about Mussolini's young mistress was taken, and it is an appropriate endpoint to this analysis of the family tree of the terrible fascist leader. During his government and leadership, Benito Mussolini tried to portray himself as a powerful and masculine man who represented all the values of classical Italy. However, his personal life was stormy and untidy, with numerous lovers, neglected children, and mistakes that cost him his life. Just like the Nazi leaders, who outwardly professed a harsh morality that they never fulfilled in their bedrooms, meeting the family of the fascist dictator is a glimpse into the mind of one of the cruelest men of his generation. Magda Goebbels was not only the most devoted fan of Adolf Hitler and Nazism, but also an exemplary figure, a role model for German women. This was partly due to her strict adherence to Nazi doctrine and her marriage to the Minister of Propaganda of the Third Reich, Joseph Goebbels. Presenting a perfect image of the Aryan family was one of the government's most important communication tasks, and Magda ensured that it was maintained. However, there was a hidden secret about her origin that, if revealed, would have led to her expulsion from Nazism without hesitation. In today's video, we will try to create a profile of this devoted National Socialist, exploring her mysterious roots to her tragic end, considered one of the most atrocious tragedies among Nazi leaders. Welcome to a new edition of Military History. Get ready for a dark journey into Nazi Germany of the 20th century. Johanna Maria Magdalena Goebbels was born on November 11, 1901, the daughter of Augusta Behrendt, a maid, and supposedly the German industrialist Oskar Ritschl. However, Magda was registered with her mother's maiden name, as Augusta married the engineer the same year she gave birth, though they separated 4 years later. The couple divorced in 1905, and Magda's mother remarried in 1908 to Richard Friedlander, a wealthy Jewish merchant from Berlin she had met a decade earlier and had an affair with at that time. According to a 2016 investigation, this man would be Magda's true father. As absurd as it may sound, everything indicates that the future wife of Joseph Goebbels had Jewish blood running through her veins. Magda's secret about her origins was mentioned in the propaganda minister's diaries, where he wrote that his wife had discovered something horrible related to her biography. Some specialists argue that this supposedly shameful fact, being the daughter of a Jew, is one of the probable reasons why Magda Goebbels behaved so fanatically towards Nazism. Her actions aim to make it clear that, even if her genetics were related to the Jewish people, she was willing to carry the rejection of her origins to the extreme. However, this would not be the only close tie that the Nazi First Lady would have with Jews throughout her life. Magda spent her childhood in a religious boarding school in Belgium, which employed strict education methods, contributing to the development of a strong personality and attachment to order and strong figures. When World War I broke out, the young Magda was studying in Berlin. Interestingly, during that time she became attracted to Buddhist philosophy and advocated for a culture of non-violence, a stark contrast to who would later become one of Hitler's most ardent supporters. After completing her education at the boarding school, when Magda was 19 years old, she met an attractive and elegant German millionaire named Günther Quandt, a 38-year-old widower. The couple fell in love instantly, and on January 4, 1921, they married in the quiet city of Bad Godesberg. They had a son, Harold, that same year, but Magda soon began to regret her decision. She felt trapped in a dull marriage, in an ultra-conservative family, and realized that her new husband was a cold and work-addicted man. Truly disappointed, Magda then met a Jewish student and leader of a Zionist group named Chaim Vitali Arlosorov, with whom she had a romantic relationship. This was Magda's first involvement with Zionism. With him, she learned to speak Hebrew and was tempted to convert to Judaism, another well-kept secret by the so-called Nazi First Lady. In the end, her husband Günther discovered everything, and, enraged by his wife's infidelity, kicked her out of the house, divorcing her in 1929. Magda Goebbels was fortunate that her beloved Adolf Hitler's party was not in power at that time, or she and her lover would likely have been sent to an extermination camp. Thanks to the generous pension from her ex-husband, she could move with her son Harold to a beautiful house in Berlin until, in the summer of 1930, her life would change forever. Magda had become an influential and wealthy woman in Berlin society, seeking to entertain herself in the best possible way, and decided to attend a party event of an emerging politician making waves, National Socialism. Joseph Goebbels, then a leading figure in the Nazi movement, went to the Berlin Sports Palace to deliver a speech and spread the party's ideas. The fiery oratory of the future Nazi propaganda minister deeply impressed Magda, and after the event, she joined National Socialism, quickly becoming one of the most important Nazi leaders in her district. Magda began volunteering at the Nazi party headquarters and eventually became the secretary to the district's deputy leader, an unusual opportunity for a divorced mother at that time. During this time, she personally met Goebbels, with whom she started collaborating, initially archiving all his journalistic articles. Almost immediately, she became attracted to the Nazi leader, a man with little physical appeal, as he was very short and walked with a limp, but whom Magda fell in love with due to his intellect. The devotion and loyalty that Magda Goebbels felt for men with power, intelligence, and courage would be crucial in the course of her history collaborating with the Third Reich. If Magda's adoration for Joseph Goebbels was high, when she met Adolf Hitler, her veneration reached a new limit. The fondness and interest were mutual, so they forged a deep relationship in which Magda became part of the small but select group of female friends of the Führer. The German Chancellor even served as the best man at Goebbels' wedding when the happy couple married on December 19, 1931. Photos and testimonies from the time recorded a certain discomfort from the propaganda minister regarding the affinity and attraction between Hitler and Magda. However, it was never proven that there was a romantic involvement. Evidently, their connection was of a platonic nature. After their marriage, the Goebbels moved to an exclusive mansion in Reichskanzlerplatz, which would eventually become the center of parties and soirees for the Berlin bourgeoisie, but above all, an operational point for the leader of the Third Reich. In the following years, the couple had 6 children, naming them with names starting with the initial of their revered leader's last name, the letter H. The children were named Helga, Hildegard, Helmut, Holdine, Hedwig, and Heidrun, demonstrating the fanatical fervor, particularly of the mother, for the Führer. Hitler rewarded her by making her the first woman to receive the Cross of Honor of the German Mother, an award that made her a role model for other German women. Magda became a kind of First Lady of the Third Reich, largely because Hitler did not marry until the final hours of his life and always kept his romantic relationships hidden. However, not everything in the life of Germany's most exemplary couple was perfect. It was an open secret that Goebbels was known for his voracious sexual appetite, satisfied with young women aspiring to be part of the Nazi propaganda film apparatus. An illustrative incident was when an extramarital relationship between the minister and a 22-year-old Czech actress came to light, deeply affecting Magda, despite her having had some affairs of her own. Magda Goebbels felt very secure in her relationship with the Führer, so she did not hesitate to ask him for permission to divorce her unfaithful husband. What she had not foreseen was that this decision would cause a scandal and an indelible stain on the perfect family image that the Goebbels presented to the German population. Above all, it would be a dishonor to the image of the propaganda minister. Despite her closeness to Magda, Hitler simply denied her permission and ordered her to continue with the facade. That decisive response surprised Magda, who, bewildered, realized at that moment that her life was not truly in her hands, but completely under the power of the leader of the Third Reich. Things were not going to improve for Magda, who from 1942 onwards began to see her health deteriorate. The German First Lady suffered from severe neuralgia, a disorder affecting her face and causing sharp nerve spasms that had left half of her face paralyzed. By then, Magda Goebbels was a physically and mentally ill woman, with heart problems and serious episodes of depression, almost involuntarily accompanying the activities, decisions, and atrocities committed by both her husband and her leader, advancing with the terror that loomed over all of Europe. For the last weeks of the war, Magda had no choice but to take refuge with her family in Hitler's bunker as the Allies approached Berlin from both fronts. Despite some escape possibilities, she had already decided to end her days with the two men who had most marked her life, her husband and her Führer. When German defeat seemed inevitable, Magda confessed to KlLLED, the Chancellor's personal secretary, chilling words that would go down in history. "It is better that my children die than live in shame and disgrace. Our children have no place in a Germany like the one that will come after the war." On May 1, 1945, after rejecting several opportunities to escape with her children, Magda Goebbels made a chilling decision. Her pessimistic and cruel view of the German future after Nazism convinced her to prepare her 6 children, 5 girls, and 1 boy, for death. She and her husband instructed SS dentist Helmut Kunz to inject morphine into the children to put them to sleep, allowing them to place a cyanide capsule between their teeth. Magda herself would administer the poison to each child, extinguishing their young lives. Later, Magda ingested the lethal cyanide she had used to poison the children, while Joseph Goebbels, looking into his wife's eyes for the last time, shot himself in the head. We are reaching the end of this installment, and we wanted to ask you, do you believe that the secrets of Magda Goebbels' relationships with Jews, both in blood and the affair she had in 1929, influenced her perspective on the people Hitler wanted to exterminate? Leave your opinions in the comments below. That's it for today's video. Thank you for staying until the end, and we look forward to seeing you in the upcoming editions of Military History.